You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks as always to those making us their first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcast. Today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's daily fantasy sports made easy at prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Welcome to a very special game day edition of Locked On Texas Tech. Happy little Friday to those who celebrate, and hope you're celebrating if you do tonight at Jones Stadium. It's the battle for the saddle, the West Texas Championship, Red Raiders and Horned Frogs, Texas Tech and Texas Christian. And Chris, this is something that is really intriguing because of some recent history we're trying to turn around. I want to get to that coming up in just a moment. We'll have some keys to a victory and something that you're going to see as part of this matchup coming up tonight from the Jones that we wonder is possibly part of a larger trend in the Big 12 Conference. We'll get to as well. But Chris, as I mentioned, some recent history here within this series has not been kind to Texas Tech. The saddle you have only got to mount, I think, one time since it's been returned to this series, and looking to change that. And as obviously we talked about on yesterday's bonus scheduling episode, going to be a year here coming up pretty soon where you don't get Texas Christian. So you need this every opportunity while you have it. And it's a big one as Texas Tech comes off an open week and tries to actually put some wind back in the sails and pursue maybe bowl eligibility.
Yeah, and if you have tickets to the game this evening, make sure you get there for the flyover. I'm a big fan of the flyover, man. I'm sorry, but I bow down to the flyover. I think the flyover is tremendous. How many times can I say flyover in my opening statement here of our lovely Thursday show? This has been an interesting, I think, series. They've beaten you. I think we talked about that a couple of days ago, 7 of 9 times. I think your last win against TCU was in 2018 on a Thursday night. Ironically enough, I think Jet Duffy quarterbacked you to I think what was 17-14 maybe was the game that you got there. And this one, it's just it's a game that I think people care about. I think that we had the whole cactus thing last year, and it's funny because I remember, last year we all know TCU's journey. But, your journey to Fort Worth last year, as I remember just the immediate last matchup, because the things I remember about in that game, they had a punt return for touchdown, which was kind of backbreaking. They didn't score. I want to say this. They didn't score an offensive touchdown against you until it was either the fourth quarter or the second half for sure. And it was and you were cycling through quarterbacks. I think you played 3 different quarterbacks in that game. As I think Tyler was just coming back on it, and it's his infancy of being able to come back, and he was not really ready yet. Behren had a high ankle sprain, and then Donovan was also dinged up, but they all 3 were kind of somewhat cleared to play, and they all did. But and TCU just they beat you in a close one, and they pulled away late. But it's funny because I reminisced about this with Coach McGuire on his show. I don't know if you remember this, Cowan, but last year you were playing TCU in Fort Worth at 11 a.m. They're undefeated. They're rolling. They're winning all the close ones and all those things. And you show up to the airport, and you had moved your flight up like a day before, moved it up like an hour or so because of potential weather in the Metroplex area. Going to go ahead and get out of town early and beat it. And we, I think, show up at the airport, and you get on the plane about 11:30, and we would sit there, and it was just like, hey, and we're in about 30 more minutes, it's going to clear up, or there's a window in about half an hour. Just sit tight. We sat there so long, they delivered dinner there, pizza, at about 4 or 5 o'clock.
couple guys graduated, received their degrees.
I mean, Miles Price is doing karaoke up there trying to entertain himself. We've gone through all the security that you're supposed to go through. And so you're in a at this point you're restricted. It's like, okay, if you get off the plane, if we all get off the plane, like we got to all get off and then restart the process all over. But to a long story short, we sat there and I think it wasn't wheels up until like 7:30 or 8 p.m. I mean, sitting on a plane for about 7 to 8, maybe even longer than that hours is, for a tall person like me, miserable. I mean, absolutely helpless and miserable. And there were people like going, you know what? I think I might just get off and like go get my car and drive, and I'll just take my chances, you know. And if you beat me there, then so be it. And then one of the airline guys is like, we can let people off on the runway if you just want to stretch your legs, but only 20 at a time. I mean, it was just like, I was like, literally my head was about to explode. And all their routine was off that night. No meetings, no movie, no whatever they do. And it was and we ended up landing in Fort Worth. We were supposed to land at Love Field in Dallas, I think. But they basically just took them straight to the hotel in Las Colinas, I think. And we just ate and then get their rear end in bed, because the wake up call was coming like at 6:30 or 7 in the morning, because you got to get up, eat, and then get over to Fort Worth for an 11 a.m.er. And you still hung in there a little bit. And so, and that was a really, really good TCU team. This TCU team, not near as good. They're trying to figure it out. They've lost 3 of 4. They've dealt with a quarterback injury as well, and Chandler Morris is down, and they've gone to Josh Hoover, who redshirted last year. But this is a total, like tonight's game is a total coin flip, man. It's a total toss up. I think both teams have some talent. Both teams haven't necessarily put it together. Both teams have dealt with turnovers. Both teams haven't had it all click, for them yet. And I think this is kind of one of those games that will kind of determine, whether you can finish out the year strong or not, because I think your schedule is not exactly easy. I think theirs may be a bit tougher on paper to finish it up. So we'll see what we get tonight. But it's really, and I know we're about to talk about this, but it's really goes down to 2 of the best running backs, not just in the Big 12, but in the country, going toe-to-toe tonight, and who kind of has the better day there.
Yeah, and it's kind of an inconvenient time to talk about that for the Horned Frogs, at least. But, among the few things that have been clicking pretty consistently for them so far this year, the ground game has been on that list, but they're coming off of one of their toughest outings of the year, only 113 against K-State last time around. We'll see if they can bounce back from that. But, you were asking me a question about possibly a larger trend. First, today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks, the most exciting way to test your skills and play daily fantasy sports, and a great way to add juice to any game, anytime. And if you've got the game, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and a giant selection of players, projections, and stat categories are just part of what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, right now, PrizePicks is going to match your first deposit up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Daily fantasy sports made easy. We talked about the Big 12 conference from a bigger picture point of view. Now, obviously, what you got in this matchup represents this, but there's also a young man in Stillwater, Oklahoma, making some waves, and elsewhere that there's like some revival or return of the running back. Is this a flash in the pan, or do you really think this is something that could hang around for a while?
Well, what is fascinating is I would say that, I mean, look, Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State kind of, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but it's like, okay, this is working. Let's feature him. Taj Brooks the same way for you here, because there's a couple things that have happened. One is typically most schools, and really NFL teams are no different. There's a lot of teams, whether college, pro, whatever, you have a stable of or a two-headed monster, kind of like you used to have with SaRodorick when he was here. Shared carries. One guy can't really handle it. And I think what we're seeing now is that there's more feature backs than we're used to seeing, which is kind of, you thought had kind of gone away. That is fascinating to me. Just to give you an idea, and I'm guessing most people that pay attention to this realize this, but maybe some don't. But 4 of the best running backs in the country, yardage-wise, are in the Big 12 Conference. In fact, 4 of the top 6 Power 5 backs from a yardage standpoint are in the Big 12 Conference. You will see 2 of them tonight in Amani Bailey and Taj Brooks. The other one is Jonathan Brooks at Texas and then Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State. North Carolina and Notre Dame each have a running back as well, but they rank in the top 12 total in yardage, okay, total yardage from scrimmage. But if you just dumb that down into just Power 5 backs, the 4 of the top 6 in the Big 12, and then obviously you've got 2 of them that we'll talk about here in a little bit. What I think is fascinating about, does this have a chance to stay around or whatever, is used to everybody in this league, for the most part, it was spread it out and let's throw it a lot. Defenses have adjusted. I think you have, like, let's keep everything in front, which basically just sometimes I think defenses were set up, we dare you to run it. Like, go for it. It's a lost start. We don't think you can do it, and do it consistently and then beat me doing it. And so now we've seen this resurgence of not just the running back, but tight ends. Everybody's got multiple tight ends. You're seeing 12 and 13 personnel groups with a lot of teams and a lot of what offenses do, instead of just 4 wide on every single play and all that. And it's just funny how the league is kind of morphed and changed. I don't know, once you expand to 16 and the Pac-12 folks come in, I don't know if there's some big picture statement I can give you that all the league does this or the majority of the league does that, because it's going to be so, it's like cats and dogs are going to be playing with each other and all that stuff. And so I'm not sure what that will look like. I'm just talking about the traditional Big 12 that we've been used to seeing, because when Iowa State was doing what they were doing defensively, they were out there on an island. And then everybody kind of was like, you know what, this works. And now there's so many variations of it. But I think it's just fascinating that there's a lot of good running backs in the league, and you'll see 2 of them. And I'll be the first one to tell you, before the season started, you and I weren't sitting here thinking that Taj Brooks was going to go over 1,000 yards or carrying it 31 times one night, 27 another night, and be this feature. It's not necessarily, I don't think, the best thing for your team either that this has happened, because I think he needs help. You need more around him. You need some different playmakers around him, but it's still, because I think that's part of TCU's problem too. I think Amani Bailey hasn't necessarily had as much help around him either. But Jonathan Brooks has Xavier Worthy, and they've got a stud tight end. And I think Ollie Gordon, he's been really the show in Stillwater. We'll see if they can continue to feature him and all that. But it's just a fascinating kind of look to see how the league has kind of cycled and kind of morphed and changed a bit compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, they say so many things about it are copycat, and I guess that does wind up to be the truth in a lot of ways, and that also so many things are cyclical. But I got to tell you, with the evolution of football towards, 7-on-7 skeleton drill, flags in the waistband or whatever, I kind of thought, no, the running back is not going to be cyclical, or the power ground game, the featured back, that's not cyclical. That's going to go the way of the dodo bird, and it's going to stay gone. I don't know what the answer is yet, but how did you feel about that specifically? The cyclical nature of so many other things, but the running back and using them in the way that we're describing here, was that one of those things that you thought, well, yeah, eventually it'll come back around, or did you see an evolution towards more of a spread out game representing, no, it's kind of gone for good?
It's a great question. And I tell you, as I'm sitting here talking about it, one thing we don't see as much of either is that, like, with what I'm talking about, whenever it was 4 wide, when the running back was involved, a lot of times you throw it to him. That was, like we could do the Torian Henderson Texas Tech thing a lot. Like, that's how the running back was used. That was a carry in so many ways. It's like, man, just hit him out of the backfield. And that's the same thing as a handoff with the way a lot of offenses were run. And now you don't see near as much, throwing to the running back either. It's just I don't know where we're going from here. I don't know if this was anybody's intention per se, where you're like, in the offseason, you're like, we're going to have a feature back. We're going to get this dude 1,000 yards. We're going to recruit to this identity. We're going to do all that. I just don't know if anybody's really rolling that way. It's just kind of the way that things have worked out. But it's a credit to guys like, Taj and this, Amani Bailey kid and some of these other guys for being able to carry the workload, because a lot of times you just don't find guys that can hold up under that workload. They just break down. They can't do it. And even Kenny Perry has told me multiple times, Taj Brooks can only do so much. Like he's and there's multiple times this season whenever people have said, why are you not running more? Hand it to him. Well, I don't think they're ever going to say this, but a lot of times he's just said, hey man, I need a blow. Like I'm not good right now. Like I need a rest. And he doesn't major in that by any means, but there's just times when it's like he can only give you so much, and a lot of these guys are the same. But anyway,
the season isn't done yet. By the way, we got a month, so we'll see if he's able to hold up or even get to some of these marks we're talking about.
I think you can get him. You potentially could get him over 1,000 yards tonight.
Yes,
and I just think that's fascinating to me.
What is it? 112? You said.
I think he needs 100. I think he needs 113 yards. If I'm doing the math right, 113
I think you said 887, something like that.
That's what he's got from scrimmage right now. He's got 6 touchdowns to go with it. Monty Bailey could, let's hope he doesn't, but he's sitting there at 851. So if he gets 149 yards, he will hit the 1,000-yard mark, and he's just got the 2 touchdowns. But so anyway, it's just kind of interesting. And as we talk about this game tonight, these 2 guys are prominently featured for good reason, and it's really about maybe at the end of the day, both of them are pretty good, and neither one of them can kind of take over per se. But each team's going into this going, our guy has to have a good night, and we got to stop or limit the other guy. It's really the same as for both teams, head coaches, coordinators, however you want to look at this. Get my guy going, make sure their guy doesn't get going is really a huge key for tonight.
Yeah, you were talking about anticipating what Taj Brooks would do coming into the season, and some of this being a surprise as far as the number of carries and, being this close to 1,000 yards with still a handful of games left to be played. And I would have said I wouldn't have seen that coming either. And I was thinking while you're talking about it that some of that, though, may have been rooted in a hope that you wouldn't have had to have that come be this way to just try to keep your head above water. But that's been the case, unfortunately, offensively, whether it's with some inconsistency from a pass catcher standpoint or obviously the revolving door injury-wise at the quarterback position. Think about where you would be if you didn't have Taj Brooks doing what he's done to this point in the season. That could be really scary. And just as a football fan, I'm rooting for the return of the running back. I'm rooting for the return of black and blue football across the board in a lot of ways. I think as a Tech fan, I've kind of been traumatized in the way that I've wound up feeling like a wide receiver is about the least impactful position on a team, because for a long time we're just collecting them in bunches. And unless they're Michael Crabtree, we're still going 5-7 or 6-6 or something. So how about an RB here or there that's got 4 or 5 stars beside his name? I wouldn't mind a go around here or there. I don't think Tech is going to get that dramatically into it, but maybe we do see it continue to cycle in that direction. More so in mass. I doubt we see a whole lot of K-State impressions, but you'll see some physicality. There's no doubt about that in this matchup tonight with these 2 guys.
Yeah, and I think if you go look at, I may be slightly wrong on this, but I think if you go look at pass attempts versus rushing attempts this year for Texas Tech's offense, there's 1 play difference in you are as balanced as you could possibly be. And I think they would have preferred to have run it a bit more in recent weeks, but you get behind, and then you've had to throw it maybe more than you wanted to, especially with somebody like Jake Strong and some of the defenses that he's had to face or the venues that he's been in. But I will say this though, I don't expect Taj to go for 31 carries on this evening. I think you've got a quarterback chomping at the bit that feels pretty good, ready to kind of get back into the groove of things and do his gunslinger thing. Not that you will abandon Taj Brooks. Not what I'm saying. I think you will hand him the ball plenty. Maybe it's closer to 21 than it is to 31. However, I do think your quarterback is ready to be a part of things again, and really, and I think everybody over there is pretty excited about that aspect based on what Coach McGuire and Coach Hamby and even Caleb Rogers told me on Coach McGuire's show. It's like, I think one of them used the quote, "Dude, having Behren out there like feeling good again is like everybody drank 10 Red Bulls." And I'm like, whoa, time out. That may make your heart explode. You try to suck that much energy drink down at once. But still, I think it's the statement made its point with me. I think I kind of picked up what they were putting down. And it's like, okay, yeah, he's I don't think he's 100% back, but I think, boy, it's as close as he's been since prior to the West Virginia game. So that part is fun.
They've got wings. It gave them all wings. They're walking on air. Yeah. And I can tell you, 3 straight days, Red Bull vodka, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, doable. That fourth one is not. That's where you got to draw the line. I learned that roughly 2006, 2007. All right, let's get a little further into this matchup before we get out of here, Chris, because you're right, man. There is mucho urgency for both of these teams. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And fall is in the air. Helmets are on heads. Briskets are on smokers. And the action is with America's #1 sportsbook. And there's never been a better time to join in on that action than right now, because new FanDuel customers can bet only $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. So dive in and join in on the fun with FanDuel by downloading their safe, secure, and easy-to-use app, where you can bet on all things under the sports sun. And when you're a winner, you're always paid instantly with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed with FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Let's get a little further into this matchup before we get out of here, Chris, because you're right, man. There is mucho urgency for both of these teams. Tech has not got some primrose path to walk down. They've got a tough one coming up, obviously, on a couple of different fronts before this season is over. Even worse, I would think, at least in my opinion, for the Horned Frogs, they got the Red Raiders. They got Texas coming to their house. They got Baylor, and then they're finishing the year in Norman, Oklahoma. So where are their next 2 wins to get to bowl eligibility? You tell me. Where are Texas Tech's new 3 wins, to get to bowl eligibility? You tell me. It's got to start here, you would think, for either one of these teams if you're going to feel better about those chances as we get into November. So where do we start the conversation for Texas Tech if we're thinking about a path to a win?
Well, it sounds like Captain Obvious, but you got to be able to run it and stop it. Stop the run. Those are obviouses. That's cliche-ish, but that's the way I think this game is going to go at some level. I think and to stay with the cliches and the obvious, the turnover margin just can't be so lopsided, man. You just, we've touched on this, but like your Oregon, your Kansas State, your BYU games, 11 turnovers, 0 takeaways. You got to find some balance there. And with that, I think you got to get this, whether it's Behren doing something, throwing it, or whether it's a special teams, you got to get this crowd engaged and kind of juiced up a bit. Sun goes down, you got to fly over. You got hopefully a huge student crowd. They're having a drone show in between the third and fourth quarter. All these kinds of things. You got Mike Jones. Who? Yeah, Mike Jones. That's exactly right.
And don't forget about the boss, Slim Thugger.
Yeah, that's right. You got them performing pregame, but you got to get these folks something to be revved up about. And that's not necessarily a key per se, but that is like an intangible that I just think that you've got to.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean it just is. I think the other thing, like here's your game within the game deal, is I think TCU has really struggled with their red zone offense. Their kicker has missed 6 field goals on the year. They have gotten into the red zone 32 times and only come away with 15 touchdowns. That's one of the worst teams in the country in that, because I'm sitting here telling you, Monty Bailey, all these yards, he's got 2 touchdowns. So I think the whole bend but don't break. And so essentially what I'm saying is this: don't give up the explosives. Like if you can get them into that area and just don't give up on explosive. They've been shown that they'll miss a kick or just can't, go for it, not get it, whatever. It just bend but don't break, and you just don't need to give up the 60-yarder or the 50-yarder or the whatever via the pass or the run. And I think defensively, yes, you want to mix in some takeaways, but and I'm like personnel wise, I'm really anxious to see Jacob Rodriguez, but I'm also interested to see like Tyler Owens closer to the line of scrimmage. I think he's a bit faster than CJ Baskerville. I think that they want to showcase that a bit, and I think that him being closer to the ball may create some havoc. We'll see what we get, but I'm hopeful there. But I don't know if I've given you like hardcore keys. I think these are more some obvious ones, but red zone defense I think is a big one, and I can't emphasize enough. You've lost so many games because of just the turnover has just been such a problem. The margin, and we can point fingers at the offense or the defense, point them at both, point them at one over the other. It's all a problem. You got to get it fixed. You can't beat you can't beat decent to good teams if you don't, because you're just not good enough to overcome some of it, as we've seen.
It's all a problem. I just found the title for this episode. Look, I want to be smart, brilliant, and deep also, but how can you get into the complexities of some other portion of the game zooming right past a 4 or 5-0 turnover margin? Mm-hmm. Like, that doesn't seem smart in and of itself. So I'm just going to make a pit stop with you right there and say, do anything but that. Anything but 4-0, 3-0, 5-0 type of turnover margin deficit, however that comes. It could be 5-3. You could take it away 3 times and still turn it over 5, I guess, if you want to go that route. It could be 0-0, and that would be better. Anything but what you have done there, which is just shoot every one of your toes off. There's no question about it. And one more question before we're out of here, Chris. I'm thinking Spike Dykes on the shoulders of E.J. Holub. Cheryl Swoops and Marsha Sharp winning a national championship. Michael Crabtree strolling in to the end zone yesterday, 15 years ago. Iconic images in Texas Tech history. Does one stand above them all? Mike Jones and the late, great Mike Leach on a Texas Tech practice field. Is that number one? It may be.
That was I was there that day.
I thought you would be.
I was there that day, yes. And I was like, okay. And I learned real quickly not to go, who is this guy? And they're like, who? I was, yeah, I know. I'm like, shame on me. But yeah, that was, and watching Coach Leach interact or kind of get familiarized with this rapper from H-Town, man, it was awesome. I mean, it was like, I was a huge fan of.
Well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Leach is like wearing his like Texas Tech Hawaiian shirt or something in the
and cargo shorts and flip flops,
classic Leach style with
his glasses around his neck, his kind of hat like tilted up so you can still see his hair. Yeah, freaking great, man.
Just amazing.
Yeah.
Look it up if you're not familiar. And glad to have Mike Jones and Slim Thug back in the LBK once again. I'm sure lifelong Red Raider fans. All right, enjoy the ball game, enjoy the concert, enjoy the flyover, enjoy the drone show, enjoy the nachos, whatever you got coming your way. It's a game day in the LBK, and we only get so many, so make good use of it, even though it is a little Friday. You know what that means, right? Remember your college days when you were thirsty on a Thursday. Get back into that vibe. We're going to be back on the other side to react and recap, of course, as we will wrap up the week before we get into the weekend for better or worse. Chris, enjoy the call there on the sideline, man. Appreciate the time, as always.
I appreciate it, man. It should be fun. Yeah, just after tonight, man, one home game left. So all that steel structure you're seeing, it will be completed, pretty quick. But yeah, just the one game versus Central Florida left after this one. So hopefully see most of you all out there tonight if you can be there or be tuned in or whatever. But we'll bring you the immediate reaction, I guess, come Friday morning.
Yeah, any march towards bowl eligibility seemingly has to begin with a win tonight. So hopefully that's what we're discussing on the other side, and we hope to see you then. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for joining us, and hope to see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.